What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sutton Brown, and thanks again for tuning in. If this is your first time, welcome to the show. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a different video than what I've normally done. This is going to be a movie report, my first one ever. Now, this is going to be different in the sense that instead of doing one single review, I'm going to be doing a review of all the movies that I've seen within the past week. This is going to include new movies, it's going to include some old classics, or even some underrated or underappreciated movies that nobody really heard of that I got to check out that I want you to be aware of. Basically, I'm not excluding any movies that I watch. I'm going to be including everything. So before I jump into the video, make sure you comment down below any movies you've seen recently that you think I'd be willing to check out, or even just some movies that you'd love to talk about in the comments. You know, I'd love to join in that discussion. And also, be sure to hit that subscribe button for future videos on this channel. Now, with that said, let's get started with the first ever film on movie report. Oh my gosh, my bad. The first ever movie review on Movie Report. This is going to be film 1 of 10. So if you don't want to stick around for each and every review, there are hopefully going to be some time cards down below. If not, I'm sorry. I need to figure that out. But with that said, film number 1 is Leo. Now, if you don't know what this movie is, it is a Netflix original animated movie. It is made by Happy Madison Productions. If you don't know what that studio is, they make a lot of Adam Sandler comedies. And this movie also stars Adam Sandler. It also stars Bill Burr and Cecily Strong. And it's a movie about a class pet lizard that is taken to students' houses, and he talks. He also offers words of encouragement, and these students learn how to grow up in the world because of this lizard. Now, this is a movie I didn't know almost anything about before I checked it out. And when I watched it, I actually thought this movie was way better than what I was thinking it was going to be. Now, the reason I say that is because this is a movie that kind of defies expectations. It's an animated movie, but it's also a musical. It's also a movie about life. It's about learning and growing up. And you wouldn't expect that from a movie about a lizard that kind of makes fun of students and tropes, but also has a lot of words of encouragement because he's been a class lizard for decades. And so he has a lot of experience. And so I think that this movie plays off the lizard's experience so well. I love Adam Sandler's performance. It's Adam Sandler, but he actually has a little bit of a grounded approach to this character, even though he's definitely got a little bit of a sillier voice, kind of like he normally does. And what this movie does so well with is it displays a message about growing up, about accepting who you are, that is both communicable to adults and children. And so this is a message that even at 21 years old, it still applies to me. It applies to a lot of people. And so I left the movie touched by the heart more than I realized. And even though not everything is perfect, like the musical numbers, I appreciate more than I actually enjoyed. And I think the animation maybe wasn't as crisp as it could have been. I just loved my overall experience with Leo. So again, this is an animated movie that you wouldn't think would work, but actually worked. The second film that I saw this week is going to be Smile 2. Anyways, so Smile 2 is directed by Parker Finn and stars Naomi Scott, Rosemary DeWitt, and Miles Gutierrez Riley. Now, if you don't know what the Smile movies are about, basically this Smile entity, is what I refer to as, takes over the mind of somebody going through survivor's guilt or trauma and tortures them for about 7 days, and then basically causes them to kill themselves in front of another victim. And then the Smile entity takes over that person and continues the cycle. Now, this isn't a movie for everyone. But I was a huge fan of the original film. I thought it was one of the most effective horror movies I've seen in a long time. And it had a really good style. It had a really great message about the damage that trauma and something like survivor's guilt can have on a person. And in a world where I love seeing people overcoming something like that, it is also good to see how damaging and destructive it can be. Like the side where somebody maybe can't overcome that. And not everyone's going to agree with that, but I like seeing both sides of it so that you can know what not to do when dealing with it and what you can do to overcome it. And Smile 2 delivers on everything I loved about the first film and more. It's bloodier, it's more gruesome, and it actually delivers the message of Smile better about how damaging something like that survivor's guilt can be, but on someone as a pop star. That's what this movie is about. It's about a pop star named Sky Riley who is dealing with all these stresses of being a pop star, of being a celebrity, and now she's got this smile entity on her, and it makes things worse. It includes not only things that are explored in the first movie, but also the stresses and the damage that something of celebrity status can have on someone. And it actually delivers that message of somebody trying to overcome those challenges but can't because of how distracting everything is. And I think the reason this movie works so well is because of Naomi Scott. She is near perfection with her performance. It's almost so real. Like, I really love how she captures everything that hurts her character almost near pitch perfect. And not only that, Parker Finn's assured direction and style and like execution on just about every element makes this an experience. It was really cool. There's so many sequences in this movie that are just so memorable because of the execution from Parker Finn. And not only that, the sound design, the music, and even the ending, like it just captivates the audience because of its execution. And that's why I think Smile 2 was one of the best horror movies I've seen in a long time, and not only surpassed the original film by a long shot, but became one of my favorite horror movies to date. I kid you not. That's how much I love this movie. I loved it so much, I showed it to my older brother like 2 days later. And we watched it again, and I loved it just as much and took away even a little bit more. And again, this isn't going to be a movie for everyone, but for me, this was one of my favorite horror films, and it is a film I'd recommend to horror fans. The third film that I watched this week is Elevation. Now, Elevation is directed by George Nolfi, and it stars Anthony Mackie, Morena Baccarin, and Maddie Hassan. Now, this is a movie about creatures who hunt people down that are not above a certain elevation. And the concept itself is actually a really cool concept. Kind of like films like A Quiet Place or Bird Box, like using creatures and a part of the environment to create a tense scenario for humans. And so my overall experience with Elevation, like going in, I was pretty excited just because of the concept itself. And Anthony Mackie, I actually really like, especially in the Marvel movies. And I'd say my overall experience was, it's fine. Like, it wasn't a movie that propelled me to be like, oh, I need more. It's a movie that, for what I got, I liked, but it did also kind of leaving me a little bit underwhelmed. I think that as a concept, again, it's a brilliant concept, and the execution itself is almost a little too simplistic. It's what you would expect from the movie, but doesn't do much beyond that. Especially with the character work, the creatures, and the story itself. It doesn't give you something that blows your mind. It gives you something that, like, yeah, you appreciate, you enjoy, but doesn't really stick in your brain. Like, most of the action sequences or the character arcs and even the story itself, like, I'm having trouble remembering it specifically just because it wasn't executed in a way that was memorable. I will say there's like one or two pretty good action sequences. I actually really like the creature design, but I think the number one thing that hurts this movie is the twist ending. I didn't feel this movie needed a twist ending. I think the concept itself yielded itself to, be a really good hook to this movie. And then the twist itself kind of just undoes a little bit of that. Like, it's not the worst twist ever, but it's a twist that, for what they were going for, I don't think elevated anything. So, again, overall, I think this is a decent action movie, but I don't know if I'd ever be urged to rewatch this movie or be urged to recommend it to people. If you're an action fan, you might like this, but for me, it's underwhelming, but it's fine. The fourth movie that I saw this week is going to be Dune Part 2. Now, this is a movie directed by Denis Villeneuve. It is the second film in the Dune franchise, and Denis Villeneuve is the director of several popular movies such as Blade Runner 2049, Sicario, and Arrival, and also several others that I love, including one of my favorites, Prisoners. Now, this movie stars a stacked cast, which includes, give me a second, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Austin Butler, Dave Bautista, and Christopher Walken, and several others. So, that's scratching the surface. But this is a movie that follows up the original film about a man named Paul who is believed to be a messiah for a group of people in this sci-fi world. And basically, this is not really a coming-of-age story, but a hero's journey-esque story of Paul rising up to his mantle as a leader. Now, this is a movie that might be a fan favorite of last year because Denis Villeneuve always makes remarkable movies. And my take on Dune Part 2 is that while it's not my favorite of the year and maybe didn't blow my mind as much as other people's, this is a movie that is worth talking about because it is one of the best well-made movies of 2024. It's got awesome visual effects. It's got a really great story. Maybe not one that resonated with me as much as other people, but still a remarkable story. You have great characters, and you have some really great action sequences. Not action sequences that go super duper over the top, but action sequences that both feel grounded and well thought out. I really, really liked how almost every single detail in this movie is thought out with the world building, with the character development. It is developed and paid off in a way that's satisfying. It's probably some of the best work in terms of applying world building and character work and storytelling that I've seen in a while. Like, again, Denis Villeneuve is always a masterclass worker in stuff like this. And Dune Part 2 is no exception. I think this is still one of his best movies. I think all of his movies are phenomenal, at least the ones that I've seen. And so, whether you're a big fan of his movies or not, you can always come away that this is something worth talking about. And I think that Dune Part 2 is worth talking about. And this is a movie that I would highly recommend to anyone to watch. The fifth movie that I saw this week is Blink Twice. Now, this is a thriller released in 2024. It is directed by Zoe Kravitz, who usually is an actor in film, but this is her directorial debut. It stars Naomi Ackie, Channing Tatum, Adria Arjona, and Aaliyah Shawkat. Now, this is a movie that I watched late at night with my brother. We were on kind of like a horror movie craze, and Blink Twice just came up, and we're like, let's check it out. We heard it's pretty good. And my initial impression is, while it's not my favorite horror movie, I really appreciated its execution. I actually really liked the story. I really liked how this movie progressively gets weirder and crazier. And even at first, like, you don't really know what to expect from the progression of this movie, but it always plays with your expectations in a way that intrigues you. And just the style of choice with the shots they choose to include and the character moments they choose to display on screen, and even the way they frame them, there's always something that catches your eye. I think that the direction by Zoe Kravitz is really good, and for the most part, the cast is actually really good. And I think what surprised me the most about Blink Twice is not only how serious it takes its material, but even how it includes a little bit of satire. Like, it kind of pokes fun at itself a little bit with the style of music, or even the style of the performances or the editing. It feels a little bit like it plays on itself to be humorous, and I think it kind of works. Sometimes it's a little bit too on the nose, but other times it actually helps, again, make it entertaining, make it intriguing, like why it's doing it this way. The only issues that I would say is, while I love the message, I don't know how well it applies to the rest of the movie. Because there's a really great philosophy on not really forgiving, but forgetting. That's like the main premise of this movie. And there's a really great quote with that I'm not going to explain, otherwise it'll spoil the movie. But it's a really intriguing message that I really like. But for the movie itself, I don't know if it applies super duper well with. Another thing that maybe wasn't my favorite is the main lead. For me, I just didn't really find her to be a captivating lead, and even the performance given by, I believe it's Naomi Aki, she's good, but she's not like somebody that, like, again, is somebody that I would naturally gravitate towards. She doesn't play a character that I connect with. And even the choices with her character, we don't have like much information about her, it makes her hard to connect with. And so, other than that, I really liked my experience with Blink Twice. It's a movie that's at least worth checking out and talking about. Even if you don't enjoy it, you can at least come away saying that there was some interesting ideas there. The next film on my list is going to be Speak No Evil. This is a 2024 remake of a 2022 film also called Speak No Evil. It is directed by James Watkins. It stars James McAvoy, Mackenzie Davis, and Scoot McNairy. And it is about a family that basically gets introduced to this other family. They spend some vacation time together, and then they decide to go on a getaway to this family's home, and they start to realize that something is off. Now, what I really like about this movie, especially the first hour, is how it plays into the details to creep you out. It's relying on these things that are happening in the background, or character decisions, and especially performances, the performances of the main actors, to convey that something is off. And as the film progresses, I love how it gets creepier and a little bit more unnerving, but you still can feel what the family is experiencing. The main family that you follow that's not a part of whatever's going on. I really like how this movie kind of plays with your expectations and keeps things really simple, but also, again, you can sense something is going on that is not right. And even as the family, tries to deal with the circumstances, you can understand where they're coming from. There are times they're genuinely creeped out. But there are also times where even though they're creeped out, they don't really do anything about it. Again, because of the way they act, the way they are as people. And even the main family that's targeting them explains their agenda and message, why they were doing this, which I think really conveys something about how something like broken families or even loss can propel people to do things that they are not proud of but feel they are obligated to. Now, there are a couple things that this movie maybe doesn't do the first half justice. The first thing that comes to mind is the treatment of the main dad. Because the way they display his character is that he can't basically lead out on his own. He always has to have other people do things for him. And they never really give him a chance to man up in a way where he can redeem himself. It kind of basically treats him as the fool. And I don't know if that was intentional or not. And if it was intentional, I just don't think it worked. I don't think that making the main dad seem like an idiot was a way to help communicate a message about how broken families can come back together. And the second thing that kind of bothered me is just kind of overall the last like 30 minutes. I think it's fine, but compared to the first hour, it feels like they're two separate movies combined into one. You have the first half, which is a little bit more psychological and playing with creepiness, and then you have the last 30 minutes, which is mostly a home invasion thriller. Which, again, home invasion thrillers are my jam a lot of the times. But for this time, it just felt like it was out of place. So I'd say my overall experience is I enjoyed it. I appreciated it for what it was. But I don't know if I'd ever return back to Speak No Evil. I might return to the 2022 version to check it out and see what was inspired to make this movie from. But again, Speak No Evil, solid, but a little bit frustrating that they made some choices that I didn't really like. The next film on my list is Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Fowl. This is the brand new Wallace and Gromit film. It's been a while since they've released anything Wallace and Gromit. The last feature film was Curse of the Were-Rabbit that came out around 2005, 2006-ish. And Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Fowl is directed by the original creator, Nick Park, and also a co-director, Merlin Crossingham. It also stars Ben Whitehead, Peter Kay, Laurel Patel, and Reese Shearsmith. And this is a movie that I was genuinely excited about because I am a massive fan of Wallace and Gromit, especially Curse of the Were-Rabbit, Matter of Loaf and Death, and A Close Shave. I love basically everything that Wallace and Gromit has come out to be. And so this movie, again, had me genuinely intrigued what it was going to be about. It's also a follow-up to one of their short films called The Wrong Trousers, which is basically about a penguin that uses Wallace's inventions to commit crime. And this follows up on the story of the same penguin trying to get vengeance on Wallace and Gromit for locking him up. And so, it's not the story that you'd expect would work by itself, but because it's a Wallace and Gromit film, you know exactly what to expect. And for me, it wasn't beyond my expectations, but it delivered exactly what I wanted. So you have a solid story, you have solid character moments, especially between Wallace and Gromit. You have really funny jokes, you have really interesting ideas. I'd say the most surprising thing about this movie is the communication of how technology can be used for both good and bad. It's not degrading on technology for being evil. It's saying that used in the proper context or used in the right way, technology can be a blessing. But in the same vein, technology can also be a curse. It can be used to commit evil things. Technology itself is not evil, but the way we use it can be. And so that's why I think this movie works so well, is because it communicates that message. And especially with Wallace being an inventor, using technology all the time, you can see where technology is a blessing to his life, but you can also see where technology may not be a blessing to his life. You can see where it might take him away from certain things, especially the exploration of that with Wallace and Gromit as a family. You can see how technology both compels their relationship and also hurts their relationship. And so that was my favorite thing that this movie explored. I will say that maybe it's not as funny or as witty as some of the other films that they've made. And again, it's not beyond what you'd expect from a Wallace and Gromit movie. But for a formula that has always worked with Wallace and Gromit, this works as good as it needs to. And so that's why I enjoyed my time watching Wallace and Gromit. Again, it's been a while. I miss these characters. And fun fact, my favorite, no, not my favorite. And also, the cameo in this movie is one of the funniest things I've seen. I will not spoil it because it is awesome. You should check it out to figure out what it is. Before I wrap up with my final 3 films that I've seen this week, thank you so much for staying tuned in to this video. If you like it, be sure to like it down below and also comment what your favorite films that you've seen recently are. Love to talk about them, or even if you think that I would like to check them out, be sure to leave that recommendation in those comments. Now, with that said, let's continue on with the movie report. Film number 8 on this list is going to be Longlegs. Now, this is a serial killer movie starring Nicolas Cage, Micah Monroe, and Blair Underwood. It is a movie about a serial killer who is a Satan worshiper, and he uses the power of the devil to commit crimes. And so it's also about this detective uncovering how he does all these crimes. And so this is a movie that I was excited for, not because of the satanic elements. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but because of the buzz around it. A lot of people liked it. I actually didn't even know this was a movie that included satanic elements. But my overall experience was I appreciated it, but I did not enjoy it. And so there is a lot of great use of craftsmanship with the cinematography, the editing, the style choices that I really liked that this movie pulled off. And even the performances, like someone like Nicolas Cage is really good at being silly and creepy at the same time. I also really liked Micah Monroe as a lead character. There's some really great exploration on how traumatic experiences can affect somebody and help them grow up and shape into a better person, even with how damaging they can be. Like, those don't define a person, but they can help them become something better. Where this movie loses me is those satanic elements. The story itself is really compelling until those elements are introduced, where the story is really grounded and it's really relatable in terms of like the character going through these traumatic experiences and learning how to be a better version of herself and learning to overcome these dark events that happened in her past. But then when the satanic elements come in, I feel that the film itself loses that grounded nature. It doesn't feel relatable anymore. And so, again, I can appreciate all the style choices, but the concluding act just doesn't deliver on what the rest of the film was building up towards, at least for me. That's how I am. And again, it's well made. I appreciate it. I respect it. But it is not a movie that I want to go back to. It's not a film that I'd honestly recommend to people. Like, if this is your thing, I'm not going to stop you. But it's just not something that was for me. And so that's what I thought of Longlegs. Again, I appreciate it more than I enjoy it. Film number 9 is Trap. Now, this is the newest M. Night Shyamalan film. He's a director known for a lot of thrillers or horror movies. You either get movies from him that are really awesome, or you get movies that are really terrible. I haven't seen all of his movies, but there are some great movies that I've seen from him. The Village is one that I like. Unbreakable is one of my favorites. And even Knock at the Cabin, which wasn't the greatest movie that I've seen, it was at least a respectably made thriller. And so I was actually pretty excited for Trap. And for me, I get it. I can get why people don't like Trap. I know a lot of people that don't like Trap. But I really enjoyed my time with it. It's definitely illogical with how things play out. There's a lot of circumstances that definitely wouldn't happen with a plot like this. Which the plot is about a serial killer who takes his daughter to a concert, and the police, the FBI have set up this trap to catch him, and basically he has no way to get out, and so he has to figure out how to escape and not let his daughter know who he is. And so like that concept, it's pretty fascinating. And again, the way they have to execute it, they have to break a lot of barriers of plausibility to make it happen. And at least for me, because of the style choices, because of the execution, making it a little bit more satirical and also a little bit, like a little bit creepy, like it's got a good balance of both. I think that this movie actually creates an enjoyable experience. It's really fun. It's entertaining to watch the main actor, Josh Hartnett, basically steal the entire show with a performance it's a little bit silly, but I actually appreciate it because he's got a weird energy to him that's just really fun to watch and, plays into his character super well. I think also what this film does really good with is even though your character's a kind of a terrible person, you also see the side of him that's good. You see that there is a side of him that wants to be like a father to his daughter that he's taken to a concert. Like he's doing it for her. He loves his family. He loves so many things about life. But then you also see that how that conflicts with the darker side of him, of the fact that he's a serial killer. There's some really great tense moments in this movie that I think, even though they wouldn't necessarily play out that way in real life if this happened, it's still enjoyable to watch. I really had a fun time with it. I also really like the music. And again, the overall style of it, it's just, there's always something that helps you have fun with this movie. You can at least say you had fun with it. It's not going to be for everyone. Some people are going to watch this movie and see, like, oh, that shouldn't have happened, or oh, that doesn't make sense. And it's a movie you can easily pick apart. But I'm willing to put some of that aside just because I had a great time. Josh Hartnett was awesome in this movie. And it is a movie that if I watch again, I will still have a good time. The last film that I saw this week is actually one of my favorites of the week, Caddo Lake. Now, this is a sci-fi thriller starring Dylan O'Brien. It also stars Eliza Scanlon, Caroline Falk, and Lauren Ambrose. It is directed by two people, Celine Held and Logan George. This is a movie that I didn't know had a sci-fi element to it until like halfway through the movie where it kicks in. But basically, you have a story about an 8-year-old girl who disappears, and you have these two people who are investigating into it. And then the sci-fi twist is there are realms of time travel intertwined with the lake. And so basically, these characters can jump through different periods of time trying to figure out exactly where this girl has disappeared to. And the reason why I think this movie works so well is that it's a really personalized story with a sci-fi twist to it. It's something you'd expect from a normal movie, and then takes something that's really popular like time travel and just intertwines it in a way that's not really unique, but it's immersive. It's something that surprisingly works well with the story they're trying to tell. The overall message, I think, also works really well about how people working to heal family relationships or connect closer to their family can do so because of their actions, but it takes time. And maybe that explanation's a little bit on the nose, but at least for me, that's what I took away from this movie. I felt like I really connected with a story like this because just how grounded it takes this approach, even with sci-fi elements, it still feels believable that these characters can learn so much about their family, and especially when the twists come in, how you see these two characters are intertwined. It's actually a really great twist, and even like the final moments of this movie are just so emotionally gut punching because the rest of the movie builds up that so well and pays it off in a way that's hopeful. It's a way that gives hope for your family. No matter how broken you are or no matter how great you are, you can understand then there's always room to grow closer or to heal more. And I think that the performances, maybe not like outstanding, they were great. Dylan O'Brien, I always love seeing Dylan O'Brien. Eliza Scanlon was my highlight. She's so good. She's so personal. And there's a scene towards the end where she's figuring out all the answers to why everything's going on. And the movie just takes the time to focus in on her character and how she reacts and how it affects her and her relationships with her family. And you can understand how each of these family members are affected by these revelations that happen. I actually was not expecting this to be as great as it was. It's not perfect. It's not the type of movie that's going to blow your mind. Something like an Inception that uses time so well. It's not on the level of something like that. But I'm not here to compare. I'm here to judge it based on what it is. I think for what it is a really compelling story with a great sci-fi twist, great performances, really solid thematic exploration about how family can heal over time no matter how broken it seems. I really love that. And I think it's a message that is hopeful to a lot of people. And so if you're into sci-fi, if you're into films like this with a little bit of a thrilling side to it and also a little bit more grounded, you will really like this movie. It's a movie that not a lot of people have seen, but I would highly recommend you at least give it a chance. It might surprise you. It might take you a little bit to get into it, but once it hooks you, you are hooked. And it delivers from beginning to end. And that concludes the first ever movie report with the 10 movies that I've seen this week. If you like this video, be sure to comment that down below. And be sure to check out next week's movie report. I'll see you next time. Take care.